Judge Randall Pierce leaned back in his chair, his expression laced with amusement. "You seriously expect me to waste this court's time on your baseless accusations?" His voice dripped with condescension, his words slicing through the silence like a blade. Ethan Cole, a former high-ranking executive turned whistleblower, stood motionless. He had faced intimidation before. He had been in boardrooms where billions were at stake, where men in expensive suits made quiet deals that determined the fate of thousands. But this was different. Judge Pierce was no ordinary judge. He was feared, he was respected. But most of all, he was untouchable, or so he thought. Ethan had come prepared. This case, a massive corporate fraud scandal, was not just about exposing corruption. It was about taking on a system designed to silence people like him. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, corporate lawyers, government officials, everyone wanted to witness what had been called the trial of the decade. But from the moment the hearing started, something was off. Judge Pierce wasn't just skeptical. He was dismissive. Every piece of evidence Ethan presented was waved away. Every objection was overruled. Every attempt to argue his case was met with thinly veiled mockery. "This is not a courtroom for conspiracy theories, Mr. Cole," Pierce smirked. "Unless you have something substantial, I suggest we stop wasting everyone's time." A chuckle rippled through the defense team. Ethan inhaled slowly. He had expected resistance, but this was not just pushback. This was something deeper. A subtle glance between the judge and the defense attorney. A hesitation before a ruling. A smirk that lingered just a little too long. Ethan knew exactly what this was. Pierce wasn't just protecting the company, he was protecting himself. Ethan's fingers tightened around the edge of the evidence table. He had prepared for every scenario, every legal maneuver, every attempt to discredit him. What he hadn't prepared for was a judge willing to bury the truth. "Your Honor, I have documents proving systematic fraud." Pierce cut him off. "Documents?" He leaned forward, feigning interest. "Mr. Cole, do you always insist on drowning people in paperwork? Or is this your way of compensating?" A few snickers from the back of the courtroom. Ethan didn't flinch. He had learned long ago that men like Pierce thrived on intimidation. He placed a single sheet of paper on the evidence table. "Then let's not waste time, Your Honor. Let's focus on this." A hush fell over the courtroom. Ethan switched on the projector, and a financial ledger appeared on the massive screen behind him. Millions of dollars, unaccounted for. The defense attorney's smirk disappeared. "This," Ethan said, his voice calm, "is an internal document from Orion Industries. It details unauthorized fund transfers from government contracts into offshore accounts." The gallery shifted. Pierce waved a hand. Irrelevant. Motion to suppress. Ethan's gaze didn't waver. "On what grounds?" Pierce hesitated. His eyes flicked, just for a moment, toward the defense table. And that was it. That was all Ethan needed to see. Pierce was involved. The judge exhaled sharply, then straightened. "This is a waste of time. Case dismissed." The courtroom exploded. Gasps, murmurs, the shuffling of papers, the hurried clicking of reporters' laptops. Ethan stood still. He had been expecting pushback. But shutting down the entire trial, that wasn't arrogance. That was fear. Pierce rose from the bench. "This hearing is over." The defense team exhaled in relief. The corporate executives in the audience shifted, satisfied. They thought they had won. Ethan reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small recording device. A voice filled the courtroom, deep, gruff, unmistakable. Pierce's voice. "Make sure he never steps foot in a courtroom again. I don't care what you have to do." The reaction was instant. The room froze. Pierce's face drained of color. The defense attorney stiffened. Reporters scrambled to hit record on their phones. The words echoed through the chamber. Undeniable, unmistakable. Judge Randall Pierce, caught. Pierce opened his mouth, but no words came out. And then a door at the back of the courtroom creaked open. Footsteps echoed. A voice, steady, authoritative, rang out. "Judge Randall Pierce, you are under arrest." The silence was deafening. Pierce didn't move because he knew it was over. Cameras clicked. The sound of pens scratching against notepads filled the space. The once powerful man behind the bench was now just another criminal in handcuffs. He turned to the gallery, scanning for allies. Someone, anyone, to stop this. But no one moved. Ethan stood still, watching as officers flanked Pierce. The judge's hands clenched into fists, his jaw tight. "You cannot do this," Pierce muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. One of the officers pulled out a set of cuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." For the first time in his career, Judge Randall Pierce actually was. The metal clicked shut. And just like that, the most powerful man in the room was led away like a common criminal. Reporters swarmed. The jury whispered among themselves. Even the corporate executives who had walked into this courtroom with confidence now looked uneasy. Pierce was gone, but the story wasn't over. Ethan adjusted the papers in front of him, his expression unreadable. This wasn't about revenge. This wasn't about winning. This was about justice. He looked across the courtroom, locking eyes with the CEO of Orion Industries, the man who had orchestrated everything, the man who had used Judge Pierce as his shield, the man who had just lost his biggest protector. "Would you like to continue with today's proceedings?" Ethan asked. "Or would you prefer to discuss a plea?" The CEO's jaw clenched. "This is a witch hunt." Ethan gave a small smile. "This is justice." The CEO scoffed, shaking his head. "You think one corrupt judge changes anything? You think this means you win?" Ethan let the silence stretch, let the weight of the moment sink in. "I think it means the system still works," he said finally, "that no matter how powerful someone thinks they are." He turned toward the judge's empty seat. The truth always catches up to them. The CEO exhaled sharply, but said nothing. The reporters in the back of the room rushed to get their stories out. This wasn't just another case. This was history, and it was only the beginning.